The dog didn't just find him. It dragged him toward something buried that should have stayed lost. Snow cracked under Ethan's boots as the dog limped ahead, leaving a thin line of blood across the white. Then it stopped, ears up, body stiff, and began scratching at a patch of frozen ground that didn't sound right, hollow. Beneath it, something metal echoed back. Ethan froze, breath catching as the wind carried a faint, unnatural hum from below. What do you think is hidden under the mountain? The sound didn't belong to the wind. Ethan Hayes woke before his eyes opened, the way he always did now, body already moving, hand closing around the cold steel of the knife resting beside his bed. His breath came shallow, controlled, barely visible in the frigid air that leaked through the cracks of the cabin walls. There it was again, faint scrape. Then a pause, then another, slower this time, weaker, not branches, not animals in the trees, too deliberate. He stayed still, listening. The Blue Ridge Mountains had a way of swallowing sound, especially under fresh snow. The world outside his cabin had been buried hours ago, thick white silence pressing against the windows. No engines, no voices, no movement for miles. But this was right outside his door. Ethan slid off the narrow bed without a sound. Boots already waiting beneath him. He didn't turn on a light, didn't need to. Moonlight leaked through the frost-covered window, enough to trace the outline of the room, the old wood stove, the table with half-cleaned gear, the rifle leaning in the corner. His body moved on old programming. Check angles, control breathing, listen before stepping. That was another scrape. Closer now, Ethan approached the door from the side, never directly in front. His left hand hovered near the latch, right hand gripping the knife in reverse hold. He leaned slightly. Ear inches from the wood, a low sound followed. Not a growl, not quite a whine, something in between. Alive. He exhaled slowly, then lifted the bar lock with careful pressure, easing it free without a sound. The hinges protested anyway, just enough to make his jaw tighten. Cold air rushed in immediately, biting against his face, carrying the sharp scent of snow and pine and blood. Ethan froze, there. Collapsed against the threshold. Half buried in fresh snow lay a German shepherd. Its fur, thick, dark, once clean, was matted and stiff with frozen blood. One hind leg was twisted unnaturally beneath it, while its sides rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. For a second, Ethan didn't move. Didn't think. His brain lagged behind what his body already knew. Gunshot. Not clean. Not recent. But not old. Either. The dog's head shifted slightly, just enough for one eye to catch the moonlight. Amber, clear, locked on him. Ethan felt something in his chest tighten. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition. The dog didn't bark. Didn't bare its teeth. It just watched him. Steady, like it had been waiting. How the hell? Ethan muttered under his breath, his voice rough from disuse. He crouched slowly, scanning the tree line over the dog's back before reaching out. No tracks. Or if there were, the snow had buried them fast. The storm had come down hard, too clean, too quiet. Then he slid the knife into his belt and pressed a hand gently against the dog's side. The animal flinched. Just barely, but didn't resist. Easy, Ethan said, low and even. Easy. His fingers moved through the fur, searching. There, a wound along the flank. Entry point small, tight, blood frozen around it in jagged patterns. Not from a fall, not from another animal. Ethan's jaw clenched. Someone did this to you. The dog's breathing hitched, but its eyes never left his face. Training flashed through him like muscle memory. Check bleeding. Stabilize. Move to warmth. The same steps he'd followed years ago in a different place, under a different sky, dust instead of snow, heat instead of cold. And the sound, always the sound of something breaking apart in the distance. Ethan blinked hard, forcing the image away. Not now. Then, he slipped his arms under the dog's body. Testing weight. Heavy. Close to 90 pounds. Dead weight. His shoulders protested immediately as he lifted, the old injury in his right side pulling tight. He ignored it, adjusting his grip and stepping backward into the cabin. The door kicked shut behind him. Inside, the air felt warmer, though it wasn't by much. The fire in the stove had burned low, coals glowing faintly beneath ash. Ethan lowered the dog onto a worn blanket near the hearth and moved fast. Fuel first, then flame. His hands worked automatically, stacking wood, striking the match, coaxing the fire back to life. Light flickered across the room, shadows stretching and shrinking against the walls. The dog didn't move, just watched. Ethan grabbed a dented metal bowl, filled it with what water hadn't frozen solid, and set it nearby. Then he reached for the small kit under the table. Leftover supplies, scraps, things he never quite threw away. Not much. Enough. He knelt again, closer this time, and began cutting away the fur around the wound. The dog's muscles tensed beneath his hands, but it stayed still. "Good," Ethan murmured. "Stay with me." The smell hit him harder now. Blood, iron, something deeper beneath it. His stomach turned slightly, a reflex he hadn't shaken. For a split second, the cabin disappeared, replaced by a dim hallway, flickering light, voices shouting in a language he no longer heard clearly. Ethan's hands stopped mid-motion. His breath shortened. Then he forced it back. In. Hold. Out. Focus. He pressed the cloth against the wound. Steady pressure. The dog didn't cry out, didn't even pull away. It just kept staring at him. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly, more to himself than the animal. "I know." Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time didn't move the same out here. When he finally leaned back, his hands were stained, his shoulders tight, his breathing heavier than he liked. The bleeding had slowed. Not stopped. But enough. Ethan sat back on his heels, studying the animal for the first time without urgency. Big. Bigger than most shepherds. Build was wrong for a stray. Too solid, too clean under the damage. Not a farm dog, not someone's pet, something else. His gaze shifted to the dog's neck. There, half hidden beneath clumped fur, something metallic caught the firelight. Ethan reached out slowly, fingers brushing through the hair until he found it. A tag, old, worn, edges smoothed by time. He turned it over, then wiped it with the corner of his sleeve, clearing away dried blood. The engraving was faint, but still there. Rook, K9 unit. Beneath the name sat a smaller designation, R7, and an old date. Ethan stared at it, unmoving. Then he looked back at the dog. Rook blinked once, still watching. A long silence settled between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant wind pushing against the cabin walls. "That's not possible," Ethan said under his breath. Rook didn't react, didn't move. But something in his gaze didn't change either. Ethan sat there for a while longer, the tag still in his hand, the weight of it heavier than it should have been. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, for the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't feel alone. But he also knew, whatever had just found its way to his door, it didn't belong to the mountain, and it definitely wasn't random. Ethan didn't say it out loud again. Didn't need to. The thought stayed there, heavy, unmoving. As he sat back against the wall, eyes fixed on the dog stretched out beside the fire. The flames had grown stronger now, pushing warmth into the cabin, but it didn't reach his hands. Not yet. He flexed his fingers slowly, watching the tremor he couldn't quite control. Cold, he told himself. Just the cold. Rook shifted slightly on the blanket, a low breath escaping its chest. Not a whine. Not pain. Exactly. More like something caught halfway between holding on and letting go. Ethan leaned forward again, resting his forearms on his knees. He studied the rise and fall of the animal's ribs, counting without realizing it. 1, 2, pause. Not good. He reached for the bowl of water and nudged it closer. The dog's head didn't lift, didn't move. "Yeah," Ethan muttered. "Didn't think so." He glanced at the small shelf above the stove. A couple cans, some jerky, a bottle he hadn't touched in 3 days. He looked at it for a second longer than he should have, then looked away. Instead, he grabbed a strip of cloth, dipped it into the water, and gently pressed it against the dog's muzzle. The reaction was subtle. A twitch, a slight tightening, but then the tongue flicked out, slow and deliberate, catching what moisture it could. "Good," Ethan said quietly. "Stay with me." The dog's eye opened again. That same amber gaze, clear, focused, too focused. Ethan held it for a moment, something in his chest shifting in a way he didn't like to think about. "Oh, don't do that," he said under his breath. The dog blinked once, didn't look away. Ethan exhaled long and slow, and leaned back again. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by the steady crackle of burning wood. Outside, the storm had softened, but the wind still pressed against the walls in low, restless waves. Hours passed, or maybe less. Time didn't behave right out here. At some point, Ethan must have drifted, not asleep, not fully awake either. Just that place in between where the body rests, but the mind doesn't. A sound snapped him out of it. Sharp, metal on concrete. His eyes opened instantly. He was on his feet before he registered the movement, hand already reaching for the rifle this time instead of the knife. His breath caught, not the cabin, not the mountains. Heat, dust, the smell of burning rubber. Ethan's vision narrowed, heart pounding hard against his ribs as the world tilted. Then the fire cracked louder, sending a spark up the chimney. And just like that, he was back. The cabin, the cold, the quiet. Ethan stood there for a moment, rifle halfway raised, scanning the corners of the room like it might have changed while he blinked. It hadn't. Nothing had, except the dog. It was awake now. Fully. Head lifted slightly, ears twitching, eyes locked on him. Not startled, not afraid, watching. Ethan lowered the rifle slowly, his grip tightening before he forced it to relax. He set it back against the wall, then dragged a hand down his face. "Not tonight," he muttered. Rook shifted again, pushing itself up just enough to adjust its position. The movement wasn't smooth. One side lagged, muscles stiff, but it was controlled, all deliberate. Ethan noticed that, filed it away without thinking. "You shouldn't be moving yet," he said, stepping closer. The dog ignored him. Or maybe not ignored, just chose differently. It leaned its head forward, nose brushing faintly against Ethan's wrist before settling back down. The contact was brief, barely anything, but Ethan froze. His body didn't know what to do with it. For a second, his mind flashed again. Not explosions this time, not noise, but something quieter, a different memory. A hand on his shoulder, a voice telling him to sit down, to breathe, to stay. Ethan pulled his arm back gently. "Yeah," he said. "We're not doing that." The dog's ears flicked, still watching, always watching. Ethan stood there a moment longer before moving to the stove, adding another log, adjusting the draft. He needed something to do, something that didn't involve thinking. Behind him, he could feel it. The dog's gaze. Not demanding. Not desperate. Just present. Like it expected him to stay. He didn't like that. Didn't trust it. But he didn't push it away either. Not yet. The hours stretched again, quieter this time. The storm outside finally began to die. The wind dropping until the world beyond the cabin felt almost empty. At some point, Rook shifted again. This time, he tried to stand. Ethan heard it before he saw it. The scrape of claws against the wooden floor. Uneven, hesitant. He turned just as the animal pushed up onto its front legs, back end lagging behind. "Hey," Ethan said, stepping forward quickly. "Easy." The dog didn't listen. It forced itself up anyway, legs trembling under the weight, but body swaying for a second before it found balance. Barely. Ethan moved closer, one hand out but not touching. "Not smart," he muttered. "You'll tear it open again." The dog took one step, then another, each one slow, measured, like it was testing the ground rather than trusting it. Ethan watched closely. Not just the injury, the movement. There was something off about it. Not weakness, not exactly. Control. Even injured, the dog placed its feet carefully, avoided putting full pressure where it shouldn't, adjusted instinctively, trained. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. The dog stopped after 3 steps, breathing heavier now, and turned its head toward the door. Toward the forest. It stayed like that for a long moment. Still. Listening. Ethan followed its gaze, although he couldn't see anything through the frosted window. "Nothing out there," he said. Rook didn't react, didn't move, just kept looking. Then slowly, it lowered itself back down onto the blanket. Not collapsing. Choosing. Ethan exhaled through his nose. "Yeah," he said, "you and me both." He walked back to the table, picked up the metal tag again, turning it between his fingers. He looked over at the dog, then back at the tag. "Someone's messing with something they shouldn't," he muttered. Outside, the wind had finally stopped. For the first time since the storm began, the mountains were completely silent. Too silent. Ethan didn't sit down again, didn't try to sleep. He stayed awake, moving through the cabin in slow, controlled patterns, checking the door, the window, and the line of trees barely visible through the frost. Old habits. On watch. Every few minutes, he glanced back. The dog hadn't moved, but its eyes were still open, still watching the same direction. North. Ethan followed that invisible line again, out through the walls, into the forest beyond. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I see it too." Even if he didn't know what it was yet, he knew one thing for sure. Whatever had found its way to his door, it hadn't come alone. Ethan didn't say it out loud this time. The thought settled somewhere deeper, quieter, the kind that didn't need words to stay alive. Dawn came slow, not with color, but with a dull gray light that pressed through the window like something reluctant. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside buried under a thick, untouched layer of snow. No wind, no movement, just silence. Ethan stood near the door, one hand resting lightly against the wood, eyes scanning the tree line beyond the clearing. The cold had sharpened everything, the edges of the mountains, the shadows between branches, the stillness itself, too clean. He stepped outside. Boots sank deep into fresh powder with a muted crunch. He paused immediately, letting the sound fade before taking another step. His breath fogged in front of him, drifting slowly before disappearing into nothing. The clearing was exactly as it should have been. No tire tracks, no footprints, no broken branches, nothing. Ethan crouched near the edge of the porch, eyes narrowing as he examined the snow where the dog had been. Oh, there should have been a trail. Something leading in, something leading out. There wasn't, only the shallow depression where the dog had collapsed. "That's not how it works," he muttered. "Even in heavy snowfall, something should have remained. A drag mark, a disturbance, anything. But the mountain had swallowed it whole." Ethan straightened slowly, gaze shifting north without meaning to. Same direction. The same one the dog had been staring at all night. He held it for a moment, then turned back inside. The cabin felt different now. Not warmer, not safer, just occupied. The dog was awake again. It had moved from the blanket to a position closer to the door, body low but alert, not resting, not recovering, waiting. Ethan closed the door behind him, locking it out of habit more than necessity. "You planning on going somewhere?" he asked. The dog didn't react to his voice. Its head was tilted slightly, ears forward, eyes fixed past the wall, like it could see something Ethan couldn't, or hear it. Ethan grabbed a piece of jerky from the table, crouched down, and held it out. "Try this." The dog didn't even look at it, didn't sniff, didn't hesitate. Nothing. Ethan frowned. "Suit yourself." He dropped the piece near its paw and watched. Nothing, not even a glance. "All right," Ethan said quietly. "So you're not starving." He leaned back against the wall, studying it again. The wound should have slowed it more, should have weakened it. But the way it held itself, the way its weight shifted, balanced, it didn't match what he knew. Didn't match anything normal. Ethan pushed off the wall and moved toward the stove. "I'm checking the fire." His movements were slower now, deliberate, every action measured, like he was trying not to disturb something fragile in the room. Behind him, the dog stood. Ethan froze mid-step. No sound. No warning. Just movement. He turned slowly. The dog was on all fours now, steady enough to hold itself without shaking. Its head was already angled toward the door again. muscles along its back tight beneath the fur. Then, it took a step. Not toward Ethan. Toward the door. "Hey," Ethan said, sharper this time. The dog paused, just for a second, then took another step. Ethan moved quickly, cutting it off before it could reach the latch. "You're not going anywhere," he said. The dog stopped. Not out of fear, not out of obedience. Just stopped. Its eyes shifted to him briefly, then back to the door. Ethan followed its gaze again, irritation mixing with something else, something he couldn't quite place. "What's out there?" he asked. No answer. "Of course." Rook shifted its weight again, stepping slightly to the side, trying to move around him. Ethan adjusted with it automatically, blocking. The movement came naturally, too naturally, like muscle memory had never left. Rook stopped again. Then, something changed. Its posture dropped lower, shoulders tightening, head angling just slightly, eyes sharper now. Ethan felt it immediately. That shift, that readiness. He'd seen it before, in other places, other lives, before contact, before things went loud. His own body reacted without asking permission. Shoulders squared, weight shifted, breath slowed. He didn't even realize he'd taken half a step back. "You hear something?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The dog didn't look at him, didn't move, but its ears flicked once, sharp, focused. Ethan turned toward the window. Nothing, just trees, still, but the silence felt different now. Tighter, like something was holding it in place. He moved slowly, stepping past the dog and toward the door. His hand hovered near the latch again, not opening it yet. Listening, waiting. Seconds passed. Maybe more. Then, a sound. Faint, distant, metal. Ethan's jaw tightened. Not natural, not the mountain. His eyes flicked to the dog. It was already looking at him now, not at the door. At him, as if confirming something. As if saying, "You hear it, too." Ethan swallowed once. Slow. "Yeah," he murmured. "I hear it." The dog turned back toward the door immediately, with no hesitation, no doubt. Ethan stood there, hands still hovering over the latch, the cold pressing in through the cracks around the frame. He didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, he stepped back, grabbing his rifle this time, checking the chamber with practiced ease. Loaded. He slung it over his shoulder, then looked down at the dog. "You're not ready to run," he said. Rook didn't respond, didn't need to. It stepped closer to the door again, closer this time, closer than before. Ethan watched it for a long second, then exhaled. "All right," he said quietly. "Just a look." He lifted the bar. Slow, careful. The door creaked open just enough to let the cold slice in again. The dog moved instantly. Not rushing, not lunging, just stepping forward. And stopping right at the threshold. Ethan leaned slightly, scanning the clearing again. Still nothing, but the sound. It came again. Fainter now, but closer than before. Metal. Movement. Somewhere in the trees. Ethan felt his grip tighten on the rifle. Rook stepped out into the snow, then turned, looked back at him. Not waiting, not asking, just leading. Ethan stared at it for a moment, then stepped out after it. The cold hit harder this time. The silence broke just enough to let something else in, and for the first time since the storm, Ethan wasn't standing still anymore. He was following. The dog moved ahead of him without hesitation. Not fast, not reckless. Just steady. Each step placed with intent, as if it already knew where it was going, and more importantly, where not to step. Ethan noticed that immediately. The way it avoided certain patches of snow, the way it angled around fallen branches instead of over them, the way it paused, not randomly, but at points where the terrain opened up, checking, clearing. He didn't think about it. His body just adjusted. He dropped his center of gravity slightly, shortening his stride, letting the dog take point while he covered the angles it didn't. Rifle low, not raised, yet ready. The trees closed in around them as they moved past the edge of the clearing. Snow hung heavy on branches overhead, muting sound, absorbing everything, except that faint metallic echo. It came again, closer now. Ethan stopped. The dog stopped at the exact same moment. No command given, no signal exchanged, just sync. Ethan crouched slightly, eyes scanning left to right, tracking shadows, depth, spacing. The forest wasn't dense enough to hide a full vehicle. But a man? Easy. Too easy. He shifted his footing, placing himself behind a narrow trunk, using it for partial cover. Not enough, but better than open exposure. The dog didn't look back. It remained forward-facing, ears angled, head tilted slightly as if triangulating the sound. Ethan followed its line of sight. Nothing. Just snow, trees, silence. Then, a flicker, movement, barely there. Ethan caught it in the corner of his eye, just past a cluster of pines, maybe 50 yards out. Something dark, low. Gone the next second. His grip tightened. Contact? He whispered, more out of instinct than certainty. The dog's body lowered instantly. Not fear, preparation. Ethan's pulse ticked up a notch. Yeah, he muttered. You saw it too. He shifted again, moving sideways instead of forward, changing angle, trying to get a clearer line through the trees. Another sound. Different this time. A crunch. Deliberate. Not him. Not the dog. Someone else. Ethan dropped lower, knees bending, weight balanced, rifle coming up just slightly, not aimed, but aligned. All right, he breathed. Let's not make this loud. Rook didn't move, didn't rush. It stayed where it was, head still angled toward the same direction. Then, it did something that made Ethan pause. It stepped backward, not retreating, repositioning. It moved just enough to place itself between Ethan and the direction of the sound, blocking. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Hey, he whispered. That's not your job. The dog didn't acknowledge him. It held position, still, focused. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then the forest shifted. A figure stepped out from behind the trees. Male. Mid. 30s, maybe. Heavy jacket. Gloves. No visible weapon. But that didn't mean anything. The man stopped the moment he saw Ethan. They both froze. Snow drifted between them, slow and quiet. The distance was enough that details blurred, but not enough to hide intent. Ethan didn't raise the rifle, didn't lower it either. He just held it where it was, neutral, but ready. The man glanced at the dog first, then back to Ethan. His posture changed slightly. Not aggressive, but not casual either. Didn't expect anyone out here, the man called, voice carrying just enough to reach. Ethan didn't respond right away. He watched, listened, waited. Another figure appeared behind the first, older, broader, same kind of jacket. Yet they didn't move closer, didn't spread out, just stood there, observing. Ethan finally spoke. Same could be said for you. The first man gave a short, almost amused breath. Fair enough. His eyes shifted again. To the dog. Stayed there longer this time. That yours? Ethan didn't answer. Rook didn't react. Didn't bark. Didn't growl. It just stood there. Silent. Low. Coiled like something waiting for a signal. The second man spoke this time. We're looking for some land up this way. Old property. Used to belong to the government. Ethan's expression didn't change. Lot of land out here. Yeah, the first man said. This one's specific. Silence again. The air tightened. Ethan felt it. That shift, that quiet pressure that came before things went wrong. He adjusted his stance slightly, just enough to give himself better leverage if needed. Don't know anything about it, he said. The first man nodded slowly. All right, but he didn't leave. Neither of them did. Their eyes kept moving, not scanning randomly, looking, measuring. Ethan followed their gaze without turning his head. They weren't just looking at him. They were mapping, distance, terrain, cover. Rook shifted slightly in front of him. Lower now. Closer to the ground. Ethan's voice dropped. You've got about 10 seconds to decide if you're passing through, he said, or making this something else. The first man held his gaze. Then he smiled. Not friendly, not threatening, just controlled. We're passing through. He took a step back. The second man followed. Neither of them turned their backs immediately. They moved slow and deliberate, retreating into the trees, the same way they'd come. And then they were gone. Just like that. The forest swallowed them. Silence returned. Ethan didn't move, didn't lower the rifle, didn't breathe deeper. Not yet. He stayed there, eyes fixed on the spot where they disappeared, counting seconds in his head. 5, 10, 15. Nothing. Still nothing. The dog remained in position. Ears forward, body tense. Waiting. Ethan finally lowered the rifle slightly. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That wasn't random either." Rook didn't respond, but it didn't relax either. Not completely. Ethan turned slowly, scanning the perimeter behind them, then above, then back toward the cabin's direction. Everything looked the same. But it wasn't. He could feel it. That thin line had been crossed. Someone knew, or was close to knowing. He looked down at the dog. "You picked a hell of a time to show up," he muttered. The dog glanced back at him briefly, then turned again. North. Always north. Ethan followed that line one more time, deeper into the trees where the men had come from. Then he exhaled. Long. Controlled. "All right," he said. "No more waiting." He stepped forward, this time not just following, but choosing to, and the dog moved ahead again, silent as ever, leading him deeper into something that was no longer just a mystery. It was a problem, and it was getting closer. Ethan didn't look back toward the cabin again, not because he didn't want to, but because something in him already knew that turning around now would mean choosing ignorance, choosing safety over answers. And he knew that wasn't how this worked anymore. Not after the men, not after the tag, not after the way the dog kept looking north like it was remembering something instead of searching. The snow creaked softly under his boots as he followed. The dog, still silent, still steady, moved ahead, weaving between trees without hesitation. Its pace wasn't fast, but it never slowed, never questioned direction. Ethan adjusted to it. He shortened his stride, staying just far enough behind to keep full visibility without crowding. His rifle stayed low, angled slightly off his shoulder, ready to rise without needing adjustment. Every few steps he paused, listened, not just for movement, but for absence. The forest had a rhythm, whined through branches, snow shifting, distant cracks from ice settling. But when those stopped, that's when things mattered. He stepped over a fallen log, placing his foot down carefully on the far side, testing the surface before committing weight. No unnecessary noise. No sharp movements. Old habits. Still there, still sharp. The dog stopped suddenly. Ethan froze instantly, dropping slightly into a crouch without thinking. No command, no signal. Just stop. He waited, counted. 1, 2, 3. The dog tilted its head slightly, ears adjusting. Ethan followed its line of sight. Nothing obvious, but something felt off. He shifted left slowly, using a thicker tree for cover, and leaned just enough to change angle. That's when he saw it. A mark in the snow. Not fresh, but not old either. A partial imprint. Boot tread. Half filled by wind and falling powder. Not his. And not from this morning. And not from the men earlier either. Different direction. Different approach. Ethan crouched lower, studying it without touching. Deep enough to carry weight. Single track. Whoever it was had moved alone. Fast. And not worried about being seen. "That's not good," he whispered. Rook didn't move. It stayed focused ahead. Ethan stood slowly, eyes scanning outward again. "All right?" he murmured. "You're not just guessing." Rook stepped forward again, no hesitation, like the track didn't matter, like it already knew something Ethan didn't. He followed, deeper now. The trees thickened, branches tighter overhead, light filtering down in narrow shafts. Snow grew uneven, packed in some places, loose in others. The terrain shifted, higher, steeper. Ethan adjusted his path instinctively, angling across the slope instead of climbing straight. Less exposure, better footing. The dog mirrored it, not copying, already doing it. Ethan noticed that too. "You've been here before," he said quietly. Rook didn't react. But its pace didn't change either. Minutes passed, or longer. Then the dog veered slightly right. Not sharply, just enough to shift direction. Ethan followed, stepping around a cluster of rocks half buried in snow, and then he saw it. A structure. Barely visible at first, just lines where the forest shouldn't have lines. Wood. Straight edges, hidden behind years of overgrowth and snowfall. Ethan stopped. His eyes narrowed. "You've got to be kidding me." The cabin sat low against the terrain, almost swallowed by it. Roof sagging slightly under the weight of snow. Windows dark. No smoke, no movement. But it wasn't decayed. Not the way it should have been. The wood wasn't rotting, not fully. The door closed. Ethan took a step forward, then stopped again. His eyes dropped. The snow around the structure disturbed, subtle, but there, not fresh, but not untouched either. He shifted his weight slightly, scanning wider now, checking angles, checking approach routes. No immediate movement, no sound, but the feeling, that pressure, it was back. The dog moved past him, straight toward the cabin. "No," Ethan said quietly. "Not yet." The dog didn't stop. It reached the door, paused, then turned slightly, looking back at him. Not waiting, not asking, just expecting. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he muttered. "Figured you'd say that." He approached carefully, angling slightly off-center from the door, avoiding standing directly in front of it. His eyes moved constantly left, right, above. No broken glass. No signs of forced entry. No footprints leading clearly in or out. The handle. Old. Metal. Ethan reached out, testing it gently. Locked from the outside. His brow tightened. "That's backwards." Rook stepped closer, nose near the bottom of the door, sniffing once. Then it moved sideways, toward the floorboards just inside the threshold and began to paw. Not wildly, not frantically, deliberately, same spot. Again and again, Ethan watched, then stepped closer. "Hold." The word slipped out before he thought about it. The dog froze instantly. Every muscle locked. Ethan blinked, slow. You didn't hesitate. Rook didn't move. It didn't even breathe differently. Ethan crouched down, running his hand over the wooden boards just inside the door. Smooth. Too smooth. Not warped. Not cracked like the rest. He pressed lightly. Nothing. Shifted pressure. Still nothing. Then his fingers found it. A slight indentation, barely noticeable. He pressed. A faint click echoed beneath the wood. Ethan's eyes lifted slowly. Then he pushed harder. The board shifted. Just a fraction. Enough. He looked at the dog. You knew. Rook didn't react. Didn't need to. Ethan slid his fingers under the edge of the board and pulled. The section lifted, revealing darkness beneath. Cold air drifted up from below. Stale, unmoving, old. Not abandoned, preserved. Ethan leaned slightly, peering into the opening. A narrow space. A drop of maybe 3 feet. Then he saw it. A tunnel. His grip tightened on the edge of the wood. The forest behind him faded from his awareness. The cabin, the men, the snow. Everything narrowed down to that opening. That's not just a cellar, he said quietly. Rook stepped closer, looking down, then back at him. Ethan swallowed once. Slow, then nodded. Yeah, he said. I see it. He stood, reaching back for his flashlight, checking it with a quick flick, working. Of course it was. He took one last look over his shoulder. The forest remained still, but it didn't feel empty anymore. Not at all. Ethan turned back, and this time he didn't hesitate. He lowered himself into the darkness, and the dog followed. The cold changed the moment Ethan dropped below the floor. Not the sharp, biting cold of the mountain, but something heavier. Stale. Still. Air that hadn't moved in a long time. His boots hit packed earth. Soft, not natural. He steadied himself, one hand braced against the wooden frame above, the other tightening around the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark in a narrow cone, catching dust suspended in the air, undisturbed until now. "Stay close," he murmured. The dog landed beside him without a sound. No stumble, no hesitation. Just precise. Ethan noticed that again. Always precise. He angled the light forward. The tunnel stretched ahead just tall enough to stand in if he kept his head slightly lowered. The walls weren't raw dirt. They were reinforced. Old timber beams, darkened with age, spaced evenly along the length like ribs. Not a natural formation. Built. Ethan took a step forward. The ground felt firm beneath his boots. Compacted. Used. Recently? He paused. Listened. Nothing. No wind. No drip of water. No distant echo. Just silence that pressed in from every direction. "All right," he whispered. "Let's see what you dragged me into." Rook moved ahead. Not far. Just enough to take the lead again. Its nose stayed low, occasionally brushing the ground, then lifting slightly as if catching something in the air. Ethan followed, every step deliberate, heel down slow, roll forward, no unnecessary crunch. He kept the flashlight angled low most of the time, only sweeping it forward in short arcs to avoid broadcasting his position too far ahead. The tunnel sloped gently downward, not steep, but enough to notice. 10 steps, 20, 30. Ethan lost count somewhere past 50. Then the space opened, and the beam of his flashlight widened as the tunnel gave way to something larger, much larger. Ethan stopped at the edge. For a moment, he didn't move the light, just stood there, breathing. Then he lifted it, and the world below the cabin revealed itself. A room. No, a facility. Tables lined the space. Metal, rusted in places but intact. Shelving units filled with old containers, boxes, equipment that had been abandoned but not destroyed. A radio set sat against one wall, its casing worn but unmistakable. Wires ran along the ceiling, some hanging loose, others still anchored in place. Maps pinned to the far wall. Ethan stepped forward slowly, the beam of his flashlight tracing over everything in fragments. "This," he muttered. His voice sounded wrong in the space. Too loud, too alive. The dog moved past him, deeper into the room. Its steps echoed faintly now. Not sharp, but enough to carry. Ethan followed, eyes moving constantly, taking in details without stopping long on any single one. Old crates stamped with faded markings. Military. He recognized the style immediately. Not modern, not even close. He approached one of the tables, brushing a layer of dust aside with the back of his hand. Underneath paper. He picked one up carefully. Brittle. Edges yellowed with time. His eyes scanned the surface. Typed text. Faded ink. Coordinates. Unit designations. Then a phrase. Canine Tactical Program. Ethan's hand stilled. Slowly, he lowered the paper and looked at the dog. It wasn't looking at him. It had moved to the far side of the room, standing in front of a wall. Ethan stepped closer, each step slower than the last. The beam of his flashlight followed the dog and then reached the wall behind it. Photographs pinned in rows, black and white, faded. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest again. Not fear, something heavier. He stepped closer, raised the light. The first photo, a group of soldiers, uniforms old, not recent, not anything he'd worn. Beside them stood dogs, German shepherds, larger than average, standing alert, perfect posture. Disciplined. Ethan swallowed. His eyes moved to the next photo, then the next. Each one the same, different angles, different groups, same dogs, same posture, same precision. He shifted the light slightly. Rook, standing in front of him, didn't move, didn't react, just stood there. Ethan stepped closer, closer, until the beam centered fully on one photograph near the middle. His breath slowed, then stopped. The dog in the photo looked exactly like the one beside him. Same build, same eyes, same everything. Ethan didn't speak, didn't move, his hand lowered slightly, the beam dipping just enough to catch the tag hanging from the dog's neck again, then lifting. Back to the photograph. Back and forth. Real. Image. Real. Image. No, he said quietly. Rook turned his head slightly. Not confused. Not curious. Just acknowledging. Ethan shook his head once. Slow. That's not possible. His voice sounded smaller now, less certain. He stepped back half a pace, scanning the rest of the wall. More photos, more dogs, some marked. Numbers scribbled beneath them. Units, subjects, designations. Ethan's eyes moved faster now, piecing together fragments without fully understanding them yet. This isn't just a camp, he muttered. This is a program. Rook shifted slightly, then stepped forward, toward a door at the far end of the room. Closed. Metal. Different from the rest. Ethan watched it go, then looked back once more at the photographs, at the one that matched, at the date printed faintly in the corner. His jaw tightened. This place was never meant to be found, he said under his breath. Rook stopped at the door and waited. Ethan exhaled slowly, then followed. Because whatever this was, it wasn't just history. It was still connected, still active, and somehow it had led him here. Ethan didn't reach for the metal door right away. He stood a few feet behind the dog, the flashlight beam steady on its back, watching the way it held itself. Still, focused, as if it had been in this exact spot before. Not curious, not cautious, certain. Ethan's eyes shifted to the door. Metal, thick, industrial, different from everything else down here. The handle wasn't a knob. It was a latch system, old design, reinforced. His hand hovered near it, then stopped. He turned slightly, sweeping the light across the rest of the room again. No dust disturbance, no fresh tracks, no signs of recent use. And yet everything felt preserved, not abandoned, waiting. Ethan stepped closer. Rook didn't move. He didn't need to. Ethan reached out and placed his hand on the latch. Cold. Solid. He pulled. At first, nothing. Then, a faint shift. The mechanism resisted, and then gave just enough for the seal to break with a low, hollow sound. Air moved. Barely. But enough. Ethan pushed the door open. Slow, controlled. The hinges groaned softly, long unused, but not rusted shut. The beam of his flashlight cut into the darkness beyond, and revealed another room. Bigger, more organized, more intentional. Ethan stepped inside. The air here was different, cleaner, drier. The floor wasn't dirt, concrete. He crouched instinctively, running his fingers along it, smooth, poured. This wasn't just a bunker, this was infrastructure. Rook walked past him again, moving deeper into the space. Ethan followed. His light traced over rows of equipment, some covered, some exposed. Cabinets lined the walls, metal lockers, tables with instruments he couldn't immediately identify. Then symbols, white-painted, faded, but still visible. Unit markings. Ethan recognized the structure, not the exact insignia, but the format, military. He moved closer. The beams settled on a wall where a larger map had been pinned. Still intact, edges curled slightly with age, but the surface clear. Ethan stepped in, studied it. Topography, mountain ranges, coordinates marked in careful ink, and lines, routes, supply paths. He traced one with his finger. It led directly to this location. Ethan's jaw tightened. This wasn't hidden, he said quietly. It was protected. Rook stopped again. Different spot this time. Near a smaller table. Ethan approached slowly. The table held a stack of folders. Old. Bound. He picked one up. The cover cracked slightly as he opened it. Inside typed pages. German. Now, he didn't read the language fluently, but enough words stood out. Enough to piece together fragments. K9. Training. Cognitive. He flipped another page. Diagrams. Dogs. Detailed. Annotated. Ethan exhaled slowly. This wasn't just training, he murmured. He set the folder down carefully, reached for another. More of the same, but deeper, more technical, more focused. He turned a page and froze. A list. Subjects, numbered, Ethan's eyes moved down the page. Subject 1, Subject 2, Subject 3, each with notes beside them. Status. Condition. Outcome. Then near the bottom, a line that looked different. Marked. Underlined. Subject R. 7. Lineage carrier, unaccounted for. Ethan didn't blink, didn't move. The words stayed there, heavy, cold, slowly. He turned his head. Rook was sitting now, right beside him. Still. Watching. Ethan looked back at the page, then at the dog again. "No," he said under his breath. "That's not." Rook didn't react, didn't shift. He just held Ethan's gaze. Ethan's grip tightened on the folder. "You're telling me." He stopped. Didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The pieces were already moving, already connecting. Too fast, too clean. His breath slowed, then steadied. He closed the folder, carefully, set it back down, then stood, stepped back once, twice, creating space. His eyes never left the dog. "You're not just some stray," he said quietly. Rook blinked once, still watching. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing once across the room before stopping again. This place. He turned, scanning everything again, but differently now. Not as discovery, as context, as origin. "You belong to this." Rook stood, not suddenly, not aggressively, just acknowledging. Ethan exhaled sharply through his nose. "Yeah," he muttered. "Of course you do." The silence that followed was heavier than anything before. Not empty. Full. Full of answers he didn't have yet. Full of questions he didn't want. Then a sound. Faint. Above them. Ethan froze instantly. Head tilted. Listening. The dog reacted first. Body low. Ears forward. That same shift. That same readiness. Ethan moved without thinking. Flashlight off. Darkness swallowed the room instantly. His eyes adjusted quickly, picking up outlines, shadows, another sound. Closer now. Footsteps. Muted. But there. Ethan's pulse slowed. Focused. "They found it," he whispered. Rook didn't move. He didn't need to. Ethan stepped back toward the tunnel entrance, positioning himself just off the direct line. Cover. Angle. He crouched slightly, adjusting his stance, controlling his breathing. Above the floor creaked, a faint vibration, weight shifting, more than one person. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Yeah," he said under his breath. "You weren't the only one looking." Rook shifted closer to him. Not in fear, in position. Ethan glanced at it once, then back toward the tunnel, waiting, listening. The air grew tighter, heavier. And in that darkness, Ethan knew one thing for sure. This wasn't discovery anymore. This was contact. Ethan didn't move, didn't even shift his weight. The darkness wrapped around him, thick and complete. The kind of darkness that erased edges and forced everything into sound, breath, instinct. Above a boot scraped lightly across wood. Then another, not random, measured. Ethan's mind mapped it instantly. 2, maybe 3, spread slightly, not stacked on top of each other. Professional. His jaw tightened. "Not hikers," he breathed. Rook lowered further. Muscles coiled beneath him, silent as shadow. Ethan reached down slowly, his fingers brushing the dog's shoulder once. "Stay." He didn't say it out loud, didn't need to. Rook didn't move. Above them, a voice, muffled, low. "Floor feels off here." Ethan's pulse slowed. Not panic, focus. Another sound, a dull thump, like something tapping the wood, testing. Ethan's eyes flicked toward the tunnel entrance. They were standing right above it, right above the hatch. His breathing dropped lower, shallower, controlled. "Don't give them anything. Don't move air. Don't make sound." The seconds stretched. Then, a sharper noise. Metal against wood. Ethan's hand tightened slightly. "Tools. They know," he whispered. Rook's ears flicked once, still silent, still ready. A crack split the air above. Wood shifting. The hatch. Ethan's body reacted before the thought finished forming. He moved, low, fast, pulling Rook with him into the deeper shadow beside the tunnel wall, positioning them just outside the direct line of the opening, not directly beneath. Off angle. Always off angle. Another crack. Then, light. A thin beam cut through the darkness as the hatch above shifted open. Dust fell in a slow cascade, catching the light like drifting ash. Ethan pressed back into the wall, his rifle angled, but not raised yet. Wait. A silhouette appeared above. Head and shoulders first. Then a second beam of light joined the first. Flashlights, sweeping, searching. "They're down here," one voice said. "Clear now. Close." Ethan's eyes tracked the beam as it moved across the room, over the tables, the shelves, the old equipment. Then, toward him, he shifted just enough to let the light pass. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. The beam moved on. A boot dropped through the opening. Then another. 2 men, maybe 3 above. Ethan counted silently. 1 on the ground, second dropping now. He adjusted his stance slightly, placing more weight on his back foot. Rook mirrored him. Not perfectly. Better than that, naturally. The second man landed beside the first, scanning immediately. "Clear so far," he said. "Check the lower rooms," another voice called from above. Lower rooms, plural. Ethan's mind locked onto that. There was more down here. More than what he'd seen. The first man stepped forward, moving toward the main room. His flashlight cut across the wall, across the photographs. He stopped. "Hey," he said. "You need to see this." The second man moved closer. "Damn," he muttered. Ethan watched their backs, watched their spacing. Too close together. Good, but more coming. He heard it. Above. Movement. More weight shifting. More voices. This wasn't a search. This was a sweep. "They're not looking for land," Ethan whispered. Rook's body tensed slightly. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Yeah," he murmured. "They're looking for this." The first man reached toward the table, toward the folders. Ethan's grip tightened. "Oh, no, not that." He shifted his weight forward. Just enough. Rook felt it. Responded instantly. Ethan's voice dropped to nothing. "Not yet." The dog held. Barely. The second man turned slightly, scanning toward the tunnel entrance. Closer. Too close. Ethan exhaled slowly through his nose. Calculated. Distance. Angles. 3 steps to cover. 2 targets. Unknown above. No clean exit if it went loud. His eyes flicked to the tunnel, then back. Rook moved. Not forward. Sideways. Subtle. But enough. The second man's light caught the movement. "Hold on." He stepped closer. Ethan didn't wait. He moved. Low. Fast. Closing the distance before the man could adjust. His hand came up, not the rifle, too loud. Instead, he struck, controlled, precise. The man dropped without a shout, just the impact absorbed by the ground. The first man spun. Too slow. Rook launched. A blur in the dark. The sound wasn't loud, not a bark, not a snarl, just impact, weight, force. The man stumbled backward, losing balance, his flashlight spinning across the floor. Ethan moved again, closing the gap, driving him down before he could recover. Silence returned, but only for a second. Above. "Hey, what was that?" Voices, closer now. Ethan's chest rose once, then steadied. "Time to move," he whispered. Rook was already at his side. Blood darkened the fur along his flank again, fresh. The earlier wound had reopened. Ethan saw it, didn't comment. No time. He grabbed one of the fallen flashlights, clipped it to his vest, then pulled Rook back toward the deeper section of the facility. "Stay low," he said. Rook followed. No hesitation. Behind them, voices grew louder. More boots. More light. "They're in there." Ethan didn't look back, didn't slow. He moved deeper into the darkness, into the parts of the camp he hadn't seen yet. Because whatever this place was, it wasn't empty. And now, it wasn't hidden anymore. Ethan didn't stop running until the tunnel narrowed again. The wider chamber behind them swallowed the last of the noise. But it didn't silence it. Voices still echoed faintly, distorted by distance, broken by walls, but present, too present. They'll sweep it, Ethan muttered, breath steady despite the pace. Room by room. Rook stayed tight at his side, not lagging, not pushing ahead, matching him. Even with the wound reopened, even with blood darkening along his flank again, the dog moved with control. Ethan couldn't ignore anymore. Not instinct. Training. Deep training. They reached a junction. 2 paths. Ethan slowed, dropping into a crouch. His hand touched the ground briefly, feeling texture, slope, disturbance. One path felt colder, more air movement. The other, still, closed. He looked at Rook. Rook didn't hesitate. He turned toward the still tunnel. Ethan nodded once. Yeah, he said quietly. Figures. They moved. Slower now. Careful. The space tightened around them, forcing Ethan to angle his shoulder slightly to pass through. The walls here weren't reinforced the same way. Rougher, older, less used. Or less discovered. Ethan's flashlight stayed off. He let the faint spill of light from behind guide him just enough. His eyes adjusting to the darkness, picking shapes and shadows, movement. Then, the tunnel opened again. Smaller room, different from the others. This one felt sealed. Ethan stepped inside, stopped. The air hit him differently, dry, preserved, untouched. He flicked the flashlight on, low beam tight. The room revealed itself slowly. A desk. Metal. Old. Papers stacked neatly, not scattered. A cabinet. Closed. And on the far wall, a single board. Clean. Deliberate. Ethan approached, each step measured. Rook followed, then moved ahead slightly, stopping beside the desk instead of the wall this time. Ethan noticed that, filed it. He reached the board, raised the light. Documents pinned in order, not chaotic, not abandoned, archived. Ethan leaned closer, reading what he could. Dates. Short entries. Notes. Observations. He scanned faster. Then, stopped on a section marked differently. Red ink, faded, but still visible. Program Continuation Report. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He read, fragments, pieces, enough. Subjects demonstrating advanced response times. Pattern recognition. Beyond standard conditioning. Memory retention. Unprecedented. Ethan's breath slowed. He flipped to another sheet, more direct. Subject classification upgraded. Integration with tactical units approved. Field deployment pending. Ethan's jaw tightened. This wasn't experimental, he whispered. This was operational. Behind him, Rook shifted. Ethan didn't turn. He kept reading. Another page, more notes, more structure, less theory, more results. Then, at the bottom, a final section. Different, short, marked heavily. Subject R7. Ethan felt it before he processed it. That same pressure, that same weight. He read, R7 lineage shows the highest adaptation rate, retains command recognition without reinforcement, and demonstrates independent decision-making. Ethan's grip tightened slightly on the paper. He kept going. Current R7 carrier exhibits loyalty beyond conditioning parameters. Recommend preservation. Priority asset. Then came the final line. Faint but more recent than the rest. Lost during transport. Status unknown. Ethan lowered the paper slowly. Didn't move. Didn't speak. The silence in the room felt heavier than the tunnel. He turned his head slow. Rook was sitting again, watching him. Not confused, not uncertain, just there. Ethan exhaled once, long. You came from this, he said quietly. Rook didn't react, didn't blink. Ethan stepped closer, close enough to see the tag again. Not the worn edges, the faded engraving. Then, back to the paper. R7. His voice dropped. That's the mark on your tag. Rook tilted his head slightly. Not in confusion, recognition. Ethan's chest tightened. Not fear, something else, something deeper. He ran a hand over his face, pacing once across the small room before stopping again. Nearly 80 years of records, he muttered, and somebody kept the program alive. His eyes moved again, to the rest of the documents, then to the cabinet. He stepped toward it, opened it. Inside, more files, more records, some sealed, some open, all organized, not abandoned, stored, protected. Ethan pulled one at random, opened it. More of the same. Training logs, deployment notes, references to units he recognized, but from a different era, different war, different world. His breathing slowed again, focused. Whatever this was, he said quietly, it didn't end. Rook stood, moved closer. Ethan looked down at him. They kept your line going, he said. No answer. But he didn't expect one, not in words. Then, a sound, closer this time. Not distant anymore. Boots. In the tunnel. Ethan's head snapped toward the entrance. Light flickered faintly against the wall. They're moving fast, he whispered. Rook's body dropped instantly. Ready. Ethan grabbed the folder, then hesitated, looked around. Too much to take, too much to move. His jaw tightened. Not everything matters, he muttered. He slid the key pages into his jacket, left the rest, then turned back to the tunnel. Light was growing, voices clearer. They split up. Check the lower section. Ethan exhaled once, then looked at Rook. We don't get caught here. Rook didn't move, didn't need to. They both knew. Ethan stepped toward the opposite side of the room, another opening, smaller, barely visible before. Yeah, he said. There's always another way. He crouched, slipping into the narrow passage. Rook followed immediately. Behind them, voices filled the room. Lights swept across the walls, across the board, across the place where they'd been standing seconds ago. But Ethan didn't look back, because now he understood. This wasn't just a hidden camp. This was something that had been buried on purpose, something that had been protected for decades, and somehow it had survived. Just like the dog beside him, it had survived. The passage tightened around them, forcing Ethan to move sideways for several steps before it widened just enough to breathe again. Behind them, the voices faded, but not completely. Not gone, just repositioning. They'll flank, Ethan whispered. Sweep both sides. Rook moved ahead, slower now, not because he was unsure, because he was listening. Ethan matched the pace, his hand brushing the wall occasionally to keep orientation without needing light. His flashlight stayed off. Light was a liability now. Sound was everything. They reached another bend. Ethan stopped. Rook stopped. Then Rook shifted left, not forward, not retreating, left. Ethan followed. The passage angled sharply, opening into a narrow corridor barely wider than his shoulders. The walls here were reinforced again. Older beams, tighter spacing, choke point. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Good, he murmured. This works. He turned, positioning himself just inside the bend, using the corner as cover. Rook stayed low beside him, waiting. Seconds passed. Then, footsteps, closer, fast. One voice. This way. Tracks lead here. Ethan exhaled once, slow, controlled. All right, he whispered. Now. The first beam of light cut into the corridor. Too fast, too exposed. The man stepped in without checking the angle. Ethan moved, not forward side. Let him pass the corner, then strike. A sharp impact, controlled. The man dropped before he could react. Ethan caught him, lowering him to the ground without noise. Second man, smarter. He slowed at the entrance. Hold up. Rook moved. Not a charge, a flash. Low. Fast. He hit the man's arm, redirecting the beam of light upward, and Ethan closed the distance instantly, driving him back into the wall. No gunfire, no shouting, just breath, strain, then silence. Ethan stepped back, listening. Nothing immediate, but more movement behind. They know we're here, he said. Rook stood beside him, breathing heavier now. Ethan glanced down. The wound, worse, blood darker, spreading. Yeah, Ethan muttered. You're running out of time. Rook didn't respond. Didn't slow. He moved forward again. Deeper. Ethan followed. They pushed through another turn, and the corridor opened again. Larger space, but not like before. This one felt different. Less equipment, more structure. Concrete walls, a long, narrow room, and at the far end, a ladder. Up. Ethan's eyes locked on it. Exit, he said. Rook didn't go for it. He stopped halfway, turned, almost listened. Ethan followed his gaze. The sound came again, closer, multiple, not cautious anymore, aggressive. They're pushing, Ethan said. Rook stepped forward, then stopped again. He looked at Ethan, direct, unmoving. Ethan frowned slightly. What? Rook didn't move. Didn't turn. Just held him there for a second. Ethan didn't understand. Then the sound shifted, behind them. Not just from one direction, both. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. They split, he muttered. Damn it. He turned quickly, scanning the room. One exit, the ladder. No alternate route, no side passage, no cover. Not good, he said. Rook moved again, toward the ladder, then stopped halfway, turned back. And this time, Ethan understood. You're buying time, he said quietly. Rook didn't blink, didn't hesitate. Ethan shook his head once. No. Rook stepped forward again, firm. Ethan stepped in front of him, blocking, not happening. Rook shifted. Not aggressive, just persistent. Ethan's voice dropped. We go together. Rook's ears flicked. The sound behind them, closer, boots, voices, light. Ethan exhaled. Fast, now. Decisions tightening. All right, he said. We move. He grabbed the ladder, testing it once, then started climbing. Fast. Controlled. Rook followed, even injured, even bleeding. He climbed, not scrambling, not slipping. Each movement precise. Ethan reached the top, pushing against the hatch. It resisted, then gave. Cold air rushed in again. Daylight. Ethan pulled himself through, rolling onto snow, then turned immediately, reaching down. Rook came up, slower now, but steady. Ethan grabbed him, pulling him clear. The hatch slammed shut behind them. For a moment, silence. Just wind. Just open sky. Ethan lay there, breathing hard, eyes scanning the tree line. Then he saw it. Movement. Far edge. Too far for detail. But there. They're not done, he muttered. Rook stood beside him, barely. Ethan looked down. The blood was worse now, soaked into the fur, dripping into the snow. Ethan's jaw tightened. Come on, he said. He pushed himself up, grabbed Rook's collar. Stay with me. They moved. Not toward the cabin. Away, deeper into the forest. Because now, this wasn't about what they found. It was about getting out alive, and the window for that was closing fast. Ethan didn't run. Running made noise. Running made mistakes. So he moved fast, but controlled. Low through the trees, keeping to shadow lines, cutting across the slope instead of following it. His boots pressed into the snow without full weight, distributing pressure, minimizing sound. Rook stayed with him, barely. Each step the dog took now left a darker mark behind. Blood bleeding through the white. Ethan saw it. Didn't say anything. Not yet. Stay with me, he muttered again. More breath than voice. The forest thickened around them. Branches heavy with snow forming a natural canopy overhead. Visibility dropped. Good for concealment. Bad for navigation. Ethan slowed slightly. Listened. Nothing behind them. Not immediate. But that didn't mean they were clear. They'll circle, he said quietly. Cut us off at elevation. Rook stumbled. Just once. Barely noticeable. But Ethan caught it. He stopped immediately. Turned. Hey. Rook stood still, head low now, breathing heavier. Ethan crouched beside him, one hand pressing gently against his side. Warm. Too warm. The blood had soaked deeper than he thought. Ethan's jaw tightened. We need to move, he said. You hear me? Not done yet. Rook lifted his head, looked at him. That same look. Not pain, not fear. Recognition. Ethan swallowed. Yeah, he muttered. I know. He stood, pulling Rook forward gently. They moved again, slower now, but still moving. Minutes passed. Or maybe less. Time stretched thin when adrenaline took over. Then the terrain shifted, a narrow ridge. Drop off on one side, dense trees on the other. Ethan stopped. Looked both ways. Bad position. Limited options. Rook stepped ahead, then stopped. He didn't continue, didn't move forward, didn't turn back. He just stood there. Ethan frowned. Move. Rook didn't. Ethan stepped closer. Rook. Nothing. The dog's body lowered slightly. Not collapsing. Bracing. Ethan felt it before he understood it. That shift. That decision. No, he said quietly. Rook turned his head, looked at him, and for the first time there was something else in that gaze. Not just awareness. Not just training. Something deeper. Something final. Ethan shook his head once. No. Rook stepped away from him. Not forward. Back. Toward the trees. Opposite direction. Ethan's voice tightened. Don't. Rook paused. Then gave a low sound. Not a growl. Not a whine. Something in between. Ethan felt it hit him harder than anything that had happened down there. No, he said again, and Rook moved. Not toward safety, not toward the ridge, back into the forest. Toward where they had come from. Toward the threat, Ethan's chest tightened. His feet didn't move. Didn't follow. Didn't stop him. He just stood there. Watching. Rook! The dog stopped once more. Turned. Looked at him. And in that moment Ethan understood. Not in words. Not in logic. But in something older. Something built into bone. Into instinct. Into every decision made when there were no good options left. Buy time. Create distance. Protect the asset. Ethan exhaled slowly. His shoulders dropped just slightly. Yeah, he said quietly. I know that one. Rook held his gaze for one more second, then turned, and disappeared into the trees. Fast. Gone. The forest swallowed him, just like it had swallowed everything else. And Ethan stood there, alone. The wind picked up slightly, moving through the branches above. For a second everything felt too still, too quiet. Then a distant sound, movement, voices, following, but not toward him. Toward Rook. Ethan's jaw clenched, his hand tightened into a fist. Every instinct in him screamed, to turn back, to go after him, to fix it, to change it. But he didn't move, didn't step, didn't break, because he knew. He knew what that choice meant. He'd made it before, seen it made. Watched men walk into worse so others didn't have to. And now it wasn't a man. It was a dog. Ethan closed his eyes for half a second, then opened them again. Clear. Focused. All right, he said and turned. He moved. Not running, not hesitating. Forward. Away. Because that's what Rook had given him. Distance. Time. And if he wasted it, then none of it meant anything. Ethan pushed through the trees, moving along the ridge, angling downward now, putting terrain between him and the direction Rook had gone. The sounds behind him shifted, faded, then nothing. No voices, no movement. Just wind again, just forest. Ethan didn't stop. Not for a long time. Not until the light began to fade and the mountains started to settle into evening. Only then he slowed, just slightly. His breathing steadied, his steps softened, and the silence returned. But it wasn't the same. Not anymore. Ethan kept moving. Because standing still now wasn't an option. Ethan kept moving until the light was gone. Not sunset. Gone. The kind of dark that erased depth, flattened distance, and then turned every tree into a silhouette that didn't belong. He didn't light a fire, didn't risk it. Instead, he found a shallow depression beneath the cluster of fallen pine, cleared just enough space to sit with his back against the trunk, knees drawn slightly in, keeping his profile low. Old habits, still there, always there. The cold settled in fast. He didn't fight it, just adjusted. Breathing slow. Listening. Nothing followed. No voices. No movement. Just wind threading through branches, and the distant crack of ice shifting somewhere deeper in the mountain. Ethan closed his eyes. Not to sleep, just to reset, but the moment he did, it came back. The sound, sharp, close. Not here, not now, Afghanistan. Dry heat instead of snow. A flash, white, then impact. His body reacted before his mind did. His head jerked forward, hand reaching for something that wasn't there anymore. Knife, weapon, anything. Breath caught, held, then released. Slow, controlled. Not there, he muttered. Not anymore. He opened his eyes, dark again, cold again, real again. Ethan leaned his head back against the tree, staring into nothing. And for the first time since it happened, since the ridge, since Rook turned back, he didn't push it away. Didn't compartmentalize, didn't bury it. He let it sit, that moment, that look, that choice. It didn't need words, didn't need explanation. He knew exactly what it was, and why. The wind shifted. Ethan's head turned slightly, listening. Still nothing. The mountain had gone quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that came after something ended, or something changed. And he stayed there through the night, not sleeping, just resting in pieces, short drops into silence, then back up again. Always alert, always listening. When morning came, it wasn't dramatic. Just a slow gray light, bleeding through the trees. Ethan stood stiffly, joints protesting, muscles tight from cold and tension. He rolled his shoulder once, checked his surroundings. No tracks near him, no sign of pursuit. They had followed the other direction, exactly like Rook wanted. Ethan swallowed, then turned. Not toward the ridge, not toward the tunnel. Away, down the mountain. Hours passed. He moved steady, deliberate, until the trees began to thin, until the slope eased, until the first sign of the old logging path came into view beneath the snow. Civilization. Or close enough. Ethan stopped at the edge, then looked back once. The mountain stood behind him, silent, unchanged, like nothing had ever happened inside it. He turned again and kept walking. Weeks passed, then months. The cabin was gone. Not burned, not destroyed, just left. Ethan didn't go back, didn't need to. Some places were meant to stay where they were. Some things didn't come back with you. He found a place closer to town. Nothing big. Small structure. Wood. Solid. Enough. Work came slowly. Odd jobs at first. Repairs. Fence lines. Then more steady. People started recognizing him. Not as the guy who stayed off grid. Not as the one who didn't talk. Just a man who showed up. Did the work. Didn't cause trouble. It was enough. At night, the old sounds still found him. Wind against the walls. A loose hinge tapping in the dark, branches shifting. Sometimes his body reacted before he could think. Sitting up fast, breath sharp, eyes scanning. But the difference now, he didn't reach for the bottle, didn't drown it. He just sat with it, let it pass. And eventually it did. One morning, late winter. The snow had started to soften. Not gone, but changing. Ethan stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand, steam rising into the cold air. He stopped. Not because of a sound, because of a mark. There, in the snow. Fresh. Not his, not from the road. Closer. Right near the steps. Ethan didn't move. Just looked. One set of prints. Small. Too small to be what he expected. too deliberate to be random. He set the cup down slowly, stepped forward, measured. The prince led to the edge of the porch, then stopped. Ethan's eyes lifted, and there, standing just beyond the last step, a German shepherd, young, still growing, ears not fully settled yet, body lean, eyes sharp, watching him. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak. The dog didn't bark, didn't approach, just stood there, like it had been waiting. Ethan's gaze dropped to its collar. Metal, old, not polished, worn. A piece of something old hung from it, half a tag. The engraving was faded, but still there. R7B. Ethan exhaled slowly. His hand lowered slightly, not reaching, not yet. The dog tilted its head just a fraction. The wind moved between them, cold, clean. Ethan stood there, not rushing, not reacting, just present. And finally, he spoke. Soft, steady. Hey. The dog didn't move, but its tail shifted once. Low, controlled. Ethan took one step forward, then stopped again. No sudden movements, no pressure, just space, just time. Because some things couldn't be forced. Some things returned in a different form, carrying only enough of the past to prove it had mattered. Ethan nodded slightly, more to himself than anything else. All right, he said quietly. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone. If that moment stayed with you, just drop a 1 in the comments. And if you've ever had something or someone find you when you needed it most, drop a 0. I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, quiet, powerful ones that stay with you long after they end, hit subscribe. There's another story waiting for you.